Psych. All right. Go ahead.
Hey, everybody. This is RJ Spina, and this is your superior self.
RJ, I have a feeling you've met your superior self. Thank you for joining the show, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and thank you for having me, Trey. It's my pleasure.
So I want to talk about this to give everyone context. You have a new book out about how we can heal ourselves, and you have tangible evidence of how you've done this with your latest book. One, why don't you give everyone the title? And two, why don't you give everyone some background?
Sure. The book is called Supercharged Self-Healing, and the subtitle is rather long. It's a revolutionary guide to access high-frequency states of consciousness that rejuvenate and repair. And that's a mouthful, but that's actually quite accurate, though. So that's the book. It's available now. I guess we could just sort of jump to what happened April 23rd, 2016. So I became permanently, so-called, permanently paralyzed from my chest down. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's autoimmune disease, thyroiditis, pancreatitis, and I suffered from something called autonomic dysreflexia, which happens to paraplegics and quadriplegics when there's an injury above T6 in your spine, and the major injury on my back was T7 and T8. So autonomic dysreflexia is no fun. It affects your autonomic system, which is what regulates your breathing, your body temperature, your heart rate, your pulse. And so this goes completely haywire. So you could almost think of it as like an ancient yogic practice to regain control of your heart rate, your pulse, your body temperature. So I had to learn real quick because that was occurring repeatedly. But I woke up from emergency life-saving surgery on April 23rd, 2016. I was already paralyzed before the surgery. And I like to say that when I woke up from surgery, I literally and authentically awakened into what you could call self-realization or cosmic consciousness. And I remembered, and that's really the word, it was like a muscle memory. I remembered the mechanics or the metaphysics of healing and how it works. And I explained exactly what I would do to walk again, how I would put my body back together. I explained it in great detail to anyone who was willing to listen, from the ICU nurse to the doctor to the nurses, who would give me the strangest looks. And then some of them would actually look at me and say, "How do you know that?" And I didn't give an answer. So, but the short of it is that as I predicted, I was able to walk again in 100 days, and exactly on the 100th day I walk. And there's a video on my website. It's time stamped, so you can see the healing, you can see the process of me unparalyzing myself. It's authentic, it's verifiable, it is not medical fiction or a spiritual canard. And the point of this is to bring into the collective consciousness a completely different understanding of self-healing and self-realization, how it's based upon physics, and that it is a repeatable process. And the healing technique that I created, was given, downloaded, which is really all the same thing, is called the Ascend the Frequencies healing technique. And essentially it's, if we look at meditation, and there's been countless studies that prove that meditation literally changes your DNA, it repairs your cells, the things that happen to people's health-wise when they do meditation, it only stands to reason that more deep and profound states of meditation only greatly increase your ability to self-repair and self-heal by an order of magnitude. And this book outlines exactly the specifics in terms of how to do this. And this is what the book is about. It's filled with client stories that I've helped, as well as my own story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've read a little bit of it, just picked it up, and I resonate with it so much. I just think that everyone needs to listen to this, right? Like, this is, you said, remember. Let me ask you this, right? So are you special in that you're the only one that can do this, or can anyone do this?
No, anyone can do this. Absolutely anyone. Because inside we are two things. Okay, these two things have always been lopped together and called one thing, the soul, right? So I think now we can be a little more accurate and a little more holistic in our understanding of what is the soul. So the soul, from my tangible understanding, is comprised of two things. So there is what we really are, is what I call sentience. You can think of sentience as a divine intelligence. It is a direct fractal of God. And think of it as your level or depth, amount, or believe it or not, your weight of love and wisdom. And our talents and abilities would be subsets of love and wisdom. Now, this is what we actually are: sentience, a divine intelligence. Now, that sentience or divine intelligence is then given a complement or an amount of energy, like gas in your gas tank. And that's the energy that we use to create. And when we're human, essentially what we do is we think, emote, and animate the body. So at our core, this is exactly what everyone is. There's no difference between RJ, Trey, and anybody else. We're all sentients given a complement of energy in order to create. So anyone can do this if they apply themselves and if they are taught properly. And this book is proper instruction.
Mm. So you, oh man, I mean, you gave, like, when you woke up out of the surgery, right? Is that, you said the download came down or the information was obtained. Um, I mean, basically, you were given information to heal yourself, but not only heal yourself, but help heal others too, right? So hence the book. Is there pressure in that? Like, I mean, is there pressure in, I mean, that's a big responsibility.
Uh, it is, to be frank, it's an awesome responsibility, but it's also a gift. It's also a blessing. It's also my honor. It's also my joy to be able to serve and to help. Um, Humanity simply needed a tangible example. They needed the quote unquote proof. The finite mind is always looking for proof, right? Because it's always looking outward. And so the key about what it is that this book does in the teachings is that you need to start doing the opposite. We all need to start doing the opposite. I didn't heal myself or unparalyze myself by looking outwardly. It's the exact opposite. And in fact, all I heard from well meaning specialists, experts in their field, I mean, all I heard, and they only had the best intentions in terms of me, and they wanted me to get better, but all I ever heard was, this is impossible, RJ. So they thought I was delirious, or they thought I was so overly optimistic because I couldn't accept the fact that I was permanently paralyzed from the chest down. So, but this, Trey, this is metaphysics. This is a deeper understanding of ourself, the greater reality, and how self-healing and self-realization actually works. It's simply physics. And it's a remembering, it's something that was in me because as a kid, I used to say, if I ever get sick, I'll just heal myself, which is ridiculous. But I knew it was in me, but I couldn't access it. But upon waking up from permanent paralysis, the veil had been lifted and the remembering was gone, and I was able to put it into action.
Mm. Well, how can I, as a sentient being, remember? Like, is it through meditation? Is it through different type of modality practices? How do I do that?
Yes, so the self, the sentience, what we are, right? What people use is the soul, but now we have a little more accurate understanding of what the soul is. So I like to say the self is meditation.
Mm.
The self is what exists prior to thinking. The self is what exists prior to belief, prior to concept, prior to ideology, prior to experience itself. So the knowingness is already within us because you're not going to learn authentic self-healing or self-realization in this realm because it's not floating around within the low frequencies of the physical universe. It's actually within you. And when I say it's within you, it's within your higher consciousness. Your higher consciousness is the architect of your form and the chemist of your biology. So the key is to access this, to go to your source point, the 0 point, as people call it today. This is when we can rewrite, rewire, rebuild, recreate ourself authentically, verifiably, truthfully. And all it requires is dedication and proper education. Everyone can do it. Everyone will do it. I promise you, everyone will do it.
Hmm. Rewire. So like, are you visually seeing yourself healing yourself or doing whatever it is that you want to do, right? Like if I want to change my reality, I visually go to that, to myself, right? Whether through meditation or whatever modality, and I see myself and visualize myself doing it, and then also feeling that, right? Like
Mhm.
feeling it, feeling me in that situation, feeling what it feels like. And then the hard part, right? Trusting that that will come. I don't know how you like, I don't even know, like, I can't even imagine the doctors or the nurses like listening to RJ. RJ is like, yeah, 100 days, I'm going to be walking. Like, I mean, I don't need like that unconditional trust in yourself, the higher self. Like, that is just, how do you surrender to that?
It's much easier to surrender to yourself than try to pretend to be someone that you're not, which is your egoic identity. Trying to be the human character is exhausting. It's straining. It's unsatisfying, and it's impossible to keep up, which is why people just eventually go in. So I actually find it's much easier to surrender to what you are because you are always eternally what you actually are. And so therefore, it requires no effort. And so I stopped trying in that sense. And I
Mm.
surrendered to myself. And within myself is the tangible knowingness. And so that for me is easy. It's what we all are. So I gave up trying, stressing, or achieving, or believing, or hoping. You know, those things are for children. So knowing this is comes from within, and to connect within yourself. And all you have to do is just to learn how to command your energy properly. It's easy. The book outlines all these little magic tricks, and make no point about it, these are real magic tricks that are in this book. And I am completely upfront about it. I was doing magic on myself constantly. And now, so when I say magic, magic to me is the accessing and commanding of higher frequency energy that lies outside of sensory perception. That is what magic is. And so, yes, I was doing magic on myself all the time. I teach people how to do magic. We've been doing magic for billions of years, right? So, this is just a repeatable step, repeatable process, repeatable exercises that you feel tangibly immediately as soon as you do it. The proof is there. You feel completely different in seconds. And what you were saying before, Trey, about you visualize it, absolutely. You feel it, absolutely. Add two things to that, because there's four. My understanding is that there's four rudimentary ways that a human being expresses itself: mentally, emotionally, physically, and verbally. Okay, those are the four ways that a human being expresses itself. So, and this is one of the steps in the healing technique. We want to combine these things into a single pointedness of purpose. So, mental imagery, the tangible feeling, the spoken word, and physical action. You put them all together into one unifying thing, and now you are completely harnessing yourself in totality. And when you harness yourself in totality, all of your energy, that reality has a far greater chance of manifesting within your perception because you are using all fundamental expressions of a human being: mental, emotional, physical, and verbal. So the healing technique is a way, it's a version of self-mastery. It's a way to harness yourself in totality that we have lost connection with. And this book is going to reconnect us with what is, with what we know deep down with inside of us, but is not available within the sensory perceptions of this realm.
Mm. Can you give me an example of like, I don't know, how, what that would look like if I were like to do those four things?
Sure. Okay. I'll use myself as an example, and it's an extreme example. So, so I would visualize myself. I was paralyzed from the chest down, so I would visualize myself walking or running. Okay, that's what I used to see. Or believe it or not, scuba diving. So I lived in Hawaii, and so anyway. But I would see myself using my legs. Okay. Then, and this is very important, and Trey, you talked about this. It was important to remember what it feels like. Now, that remembering is within, it's a muscle memory. It's important to remember what that feels like. So I used to tangibly remember what it felt like to have the vitality in my legs, to be able to stand, to feel the muscles, to feel the blood moving. So I would see it, and then I would feel it. Then I would verbalize it. I would verbalize it. I would say things like, I am bringing energy and vitality back through my spine and into my legs now, as a command. And at the same time, seeing it, feeling it, and saying that, while I was in the rehab, hospital rehab, I would have the physical therapists um, move my legs, obviously for me, because I couldn't do it. So they would be moving my legs, like bringing my knees up to my chest like this, and I would be doing that. I'd be seeing it in my mind's eye. I'd be remembering what it feels like. I would be verbalizing the command, and then we would be adding into the physical action. So all four fundamental ways in which a human being can express itself was brought into one single pointedness of focus. When all your energy is going in one direction, there can only be one end result, and that is the fruition of your intention. As long as we don't send a contradictory electrical impulse in a different direction, like doubt, then you're making it impossible for you to actually have your achievement come into manifestation. So I never did that. So I never doubted for a second. But combining those four things, everyone who's is trying to overcome anything, and that's one of the steps in the healing technique in the book.
Mm.
Watch what happens to your energy and how you feel when you command yourself in that way. It is literally authentic magic.
I have I've scripted before, like what you're talking about, with just scenarios in my life that I want to see manifest, right? Like I have felt the difference in energy inside of myself, especially like, the excitement of it happening, right? It is it is overlapped in my life, personal life, professional life. Like it's amazing what, that power that we can create just by speaking that, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
and
it's
yeah, go ahead, Joe. Yeah.
oh, I was just going to say, like, which brings me to my next question is, you have these four ways of manifestation or intention creation. It always makes me wonder, just with reading just a little bit of your book and hearing you speak, like, why is it that we're here, right? Like, why is it that we're here in this human existence? Because it's like I get kind of confused when I do my research or when I have my reading time to myself, and I'm reading books of, like, I'm sure this I am that, right?
Mhm.
And I listen to, like, maybe like, I don't know, Zen mindsets or different types of modalities, and it's like, are we here to create? Are we here to be co-creators? Are we here to feel that, have desires? Or are we just here to, I don't know. I feel like sometimes the people, like very high spiritual teachers, are like, their message is, let go of the ego, fight the ego, don't be that. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like I feel like, quiet the mind. Don't be like, don't be of this world, or let go of the desires. But I feel like I naturally have desires. Like I naturally want to create a reality, right? Like, what, like, can you, like, hit on that a little bit?
Yes, that's a great question. It's a deep question. Um, why don't we take a very sort of macro view of this, and we can just kind of drill down a little bit. So the point of having the human experience is it's really the only way the higher self, which is we are a piece of the higher self, and actually we're about 2.5% of the higher self, by the way. And so this is my little analogy, by the way. Pretend this is an octopus. I realize it's my fist, but this is an octopus. And so just imagine an octopus dropping down one of its tentacles to kind of see what the water is like down here. So the higher self, and we are a piece of the higher self, a projection of the higher self, an aspect of the higher self. So the only way this higher self, which exists in much higher frequencies and dimensions than the physical universe, infinitely higher, the only way for it to experience physical reality is to project a piece of itself, you and me. So the point is for the higher self to evolve. And we are a piece. Think of it as like a drone or a tentacle. And when the higher self projects a piece of itself, whether it's Trey, me, you, doesn't matter, right? The higher self then goes into stasis. And the projections are then accruing and evolving for it because this is a piece of it. So that information is concurrently and in parallel, simultaneously going back to this. But it's in stasis, it's in hibernation, and we are the ones that are learning on its behalf. So the point is that this is for the higher self to evolve itself. And the only way it can experience the low frequencies of the physical universe is to project only a tiny piece of itself, and that's you and me. And for us to be able to have a physical incarnation, whether it's in the third frequency, we're not in the third dimension, by the way, we're in the third frequency of the first dimension. The only way that we can experience physical reality is to have a suit that is attuned to the local environment. So that suit is this, right? A human being is just a suit. We're all sentience given energy. Everything is sentience given energy. But the suit has to be attuned to the local environment. So for the higher self to evolve, it must experience every frequency, every reality within the multiverse. And as it experiences that, it keeps accruing and deepening its reservoir of love and wisdom. And it is evolving. And as the higher self evolves, and there are billions and billions of higher selves, our God, our source, our creator, which created the higher selves, it is evolving as its creations are evolving. And as its creations are evolving, it all kicks its way back up to source, God, creator. So it is all for the evolutionary project or the evolutionary cycle for existence to know itself in totality, which is impossible. So it's a never ending with with no beginning either, which the finite mind can't comprehend. But we're simply here to experience the low frequencies of the physical universe and to realize the self, hence self realization. So we don't have to worry about fitting in. We didn't come here to stay. And after a certain amount of incarnations, by the way, roughly about 35,000 incarnations, and at that point, on average, at that point, the soul has nothing it can learn from having an incarnation within the physical universe. And then at that point, you could say it has graduated high school, and then it doesn't need to incarnate into the physical universe, and it moves on to other experiences.
So I know people listening to this are like, man, this guy's really, really specific on some of these points. Like, is this some of the data that was downloaded when you came out of the surgery? Is this like some of the information and consciousness, like information that came to you?
Yeah, so some of it is yes, I guess we'll call it that. We could say some of it was downloaded. You can you can look at me as if I'm channeling. If it's easier to see it as that I'm channeling, I'm not really channeling, but if you want to see it that way, that's fine. Uh, a lot of it is remembering. A lot of this is part of my sentience that I've was given because I was created. I didn't create myself. I'm an aspect of my higher self, just like everyone else is. So I didn't create myself. So it's a remembering of these things, and through the shedding of the human condition, and you can call that self-realization if you like. This is what comes back online. What you really are is now online. The human condition has been transcended, and so you're able to then understand yourself, remember yourself, and you're also able to access your higher consciousness and therefore these higher realms of existence. And within this, the knowingness occurs. And it has nothing to do with thinking. This is an important point I want to make, and I'm just going to give a quick analogy, Trey. When we're in the lower frequencies of the physical universe, as we are right now, think of a maze, right? We don't know what's going to happen if we make a left or a right. We don't know if we're going to get out. We don't know what lies after we make this next right or after this next left. We don't know. Okay, so what do? We think. We try to figure it out, right? Okay. Useless. So really what we want to do, okay, is imagine yourself in that maze, and then all of a sudden you rise up above the maze. You're no longer in it. Now you're looking down right at it. And in that moment, you see all the permutations. You see everything. You understand everything in 1 second. And there's no thinking at all involved in that. Hence, this is the knowingness.
Hmm.
Now, this is what's inside of all of us, knowingness. The depth of knowingness just has to do with where that soul is within its own evolutionary cycle. But this is the difference between thinking and knowing. Thinking is faltering. Don't
Hmm.
bother thinking. Stop thinking and start to work with your own tangible knowingness, and watch what happens to your life in every single aspect.
Well, when we shed this vehicle, when we expire here, right? Like when we leave our bodies, do we have that knowingness? Like, do we remember when we shed this?
Yes, what shed is really the delusions. How I describe it in the book is what we shed is misperceptions, misunderstandings, and misidentifications.
Hmm.
And the accumulation of our misperceptions, misunderstandings, and misidentifications is our egoic mind, and therefore the character that we create when we're here. It's solely based upon identifying with things that are in this realm, and they have nothing to do with us at all. And yet we create a character based upon everything that's here. And this is the what I call the ego mind identity. And this is what must be transcended. And this is what in all esoteric literature and mystics and authentic masters, they all talk about transcending the ego. I just prefer to call it the ego mind identity because I think it's more specific and gives us a better understanding of how it actually works. And the first part of the book goes into great detail about the ego mind identity. And this is the only obstacle that exists.
Hmm.
Because when we incarnate into the lower frequencies, think of a slinky like going down the stairs. I'm dating myself now talking about a slinky.
Mhm.
But if you think of a slinky going down the stairs, right? So as we are projected down in dimension and frequency, we're losing consciousness. Okay, we're losing, instead of being on the top floor, on the top step where the slinky's going down with that broad view and that totally holistic perspective of everything that's down below. So when we're projected down here, we lose that perspective. We lose that holistic understanding of the environment and ourself, and we're completely reduced down to identifying with this body, which limits us to what I call body consciousness. Body consciousness is just the five physical senses and the data stream that comes in, which forms our intellect. It's nothing. It's nothing. Intellectualism is nothing because our five senses are operating on such a narrow bandwidth. This is how much light comes in for our eyes, and this is how much light comes in for our ears, and so on and so forth. It's infinitesimal. And what you are is beyond just what the five senses can perceive. It's beyond this physical vehicle. So, in order to start to work with ourselves in a very holistic way, which is what the book outlines, we have to start leaving behind the ego mind identity. And there are certain exercises, they're so simple. There's certain exercises we can do that stops that whole program of limitations from running, which is called thinking. So, hence meditation. Right?
Mhm.
So the key is just to be able to stop this program of limitations, the identification with the body and everything here, and free yourself. And now, as we were talking about, Trey, now you can create the life that is resonant with the real you, with what you're passionate about, with what means something. And this is how we transcend the human condition.
Mm. I think the problem is people get tired. Like maybe they get impatient with that because I feel like down here in the lower frequency, it just takes longer for things to manifest.
It does. It does take longer, but the point of it is to see ourselves in the act of creation. See, only the lower frequencies afford that. So in the higher frequencies, higher dimensions, it's literally that fast. As soon as you have an intention, it happens because the energy is completely different. It's vibrating at a much faster rate. So intention changes everything immediately. Here, the energy, the frequency in which the energies are operating within the three lower frequencies, which band together into one thing, which we call three-dimensional reality, or height, weight, and width. Energy is moving slower, much more dense, but this affords an immortal creator being the opportunity to see itself in the act of creation.
Hmm.
And so this is amazing. This is wonderful. This is nothing to get frustrated with, but that's because we're used to operating in a much higher way where it's sort of instantaneous. But this shows us we learn things that you can only learn here. Embrace the process. Really embrace it, because you can only experience seeing yourself in the act of creation while you're immersed within the lower frequencies.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I love that. I just, ooh, it just like you look at everything that the mystical text, the literature says, like, Jesus, you too will do great things. In John in chapter 10, he talks about, doesn't it say in your books that you two are God, like you are of that? And so, like, I just feel like going back to my other question, like, or not question, but statement rather, like, I feel like my natural being is to create. Like, I've tried to um just be more mindful through meditation, through life, and not, just saying, oh, that's just the ego, wanting to have these things. But the more that I meditate, the more that I listen to spiritual teachers that resonate with me, the more that I'm finding out that that is my natural being, those desires are not bad. They're just a part of what I am. And to see, like you were talking about, yourself create these things. There's nothing I can remember. I don't know, maybe a year ago, I had someone ask me. She was like, I think she was on the show or something. She had asked me a question. I can't remember her name or who it was, but she said, what gives you the most joy? And I said, man, when you can just do something, like you follow the directions on something and it works, or you create something and it works, that to me is like the most highest, like gratifying feeling. And it's like, it's innate. It's like in me, like, so I feel like the message should be to a lot of people, because some people think it's bad to desire things. I don't think it's bad to desire anything really. It just depends on what you're focusing on or your intention is. But to feel that, and feel like you're talking about visualization, see yourself creating that. And then people say, well, how can I feel it if it's never happened? Right? Like, if I have this dream, this awesome dream, things like this has never happened to me before, like healing, right? Like, if I have this disease, let's say cancer, like, how do I feel that? How do I know that that's what this is going to feel like? Right. And what's your answer to that?
Well, the first thing I want to answer is what you said about creating, having desire to create. Okay, so let's look at, from my understanding, let's look at the order of creation. So, as I understand it and experience it tangibly, it is desire, intention, thought, emotion, action, and behavior. That is actually the order of creation. That's also descendant in frequency. So, desire and intention are much higher frequencies than thought and emotion. And then action and behavior are actually the lowest frequencies, as they're more rooted within physical reality, too, as we kind of make that tangible correlation right there. So, that's the order of creation. We are immortal creator beings. We feel most like ourselves when we are creating. There's no right or wrong with having desire. That's nonsense. Desire sets into motion the order of creation. What's truly important, Trey, is to understand your motivation behind your desire, intention, thought, emotion, action, and behavior, is understanding your motivation behind it.
Mm.
Not that there's anything wrong with desire, intention, thought, emotion, because there's nothing wrong with that. That is the order of creation when we're human. What is driving it? What is the motivation? Is it the EMI, the ego mind identity, that is driving the desire? Is the desire to acquire? Is the desire to become? Is the desire to gain? Then we might want to look at that motivation. Because once we reside within the self, that motivation, in terms of the springboard for the desire, is gone. The only true compulsion in terms of desire is to share and to give. Now, I have strong desire to do that. In fact, I would even say my desire and intention is unstoppable. Not even paralysis can stop my desire and intention. But we must understand the motivation behind the desire and intention. And we do this by asking ourselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? We question. If we question ourselves, we'll understand the true motivation behind our desire. And once we're able to understand our motivation behind our desire and intention, that is real power. When we understand our motivation, we are then acting and behaving and living like a limitless being.
Mm. Well, I know mine is freedom, right?
Mm, mm,
Freedom,
mm,
to go and enjoy this world, to play in it, not for ego purposes, but just for the the remembering of what we are, to see it come to to pass, and know that I'm connected to that higher self, to source, because this is exactly what I wanted to create. And then once you create it, enjoy it and play in this world, and travel and see amazing sights and meet amazing people and pass this information on to people and free them as well.
mm.
Like, let's get out of this machine. Let's get out of this this consumerism, of materialism, of this old mindset of lower frequency, of bondage, like that's my reason why.
I couldn't resonate with that more. It's all about freedom, without a doubt. And we are all already free. Our only bondage is not realizing it.
Hmm.
We, we are, we refuse to challenge the beliefs, the concepts, the ideologies, the so called knowledge that is foisted upon us through societal pressures. And if you're not willing to challenge your beliefs, concepts, ideologies, and so called knowledge, then you are simply the warden of your own prison.
Hmm. I think a lot of people, especially people who are newer to this, right, these concepts, well, they're like, well, I've been doing this for, let's say, I don't know, let's say it could be health, it could be your career, it could be a marriage. It's like fearful, right? That I can change this. I can recreate something, my reality. But it's like having faith in that. Like, what if I lose my job, or what if I lose my marriage, or what if I lose my health even more? Let's say if, like, someone has cancer, right? And they have this intuition that we are higher beings, that we don't have to go through chemo, or we have to take these pharmaceutical um, drugs to heal ourselves. Like, they want to trust this, but is it because their beliefs are so like hardcore set that they can't do that other method? You know what I mean? Like, they can't do your method because their beliefs are so strong. Like, I think it's fear. It's like, I am stuck in a job and I hate it and I don't want to go to work anymore. I don't want to do the 9 to 5. I don't want to do this and that. But it's like, if I don't go, how will I make money? How will I continue living the way that I want? I'll end up poor. I will have to move out of my house. I'll lose my family. I'll lose my Um, I'll lose money in my account. I'll be homeless. I won't be able to eat. These fears play a lot into it.
Oh, absolutely. These are identifications. I want us to see metaphysically what we're really talking about, Trey. These are identifications with things. And so it's too big a blow to the ego mind identity. And so it clings onto these things as part of the accumulation of what makes up the false self. And this is why people, once they believe something, they rather be right and suffer. But as long as they can be right, because it feeds that ego mind identity, they actually see themselves in this, the identification. It's too big a blow to the false self. And so they cling to these things. We only lose what we hold on to.
Hmm,
If you hold on to nothing, how do you lose anything?
hmm,
You can't, right? It's impossible. Okay. Now, it's very easy for me because my body was destroyed and I couldn't feel it and it didn't work. Right. So I set this up for myself. And my last name is Spina. It means spine. Okay. This was all mapped out. This was all planned out. I needed a worthy challenge and I gave myself a worthy challenge and I accepted it wholeheartedly. But I held on to nothing. Therefore, there was nothing to lose. I was free to create. I was free to put myself back together. Now, we do this in all other facets of our life. We create a new career, we create a new relationship, right? We work out, we create a new body, right? We start studying new information, we create a different facet of our own intellect. Somehow, though, somehow, we are so programmed to believe that we cannot do what we do in every other facet of our life. We can't do that with our healing. And people really buy into that at their own peril. There's a reason why people are not yet on paralyzing themselves and doing these things. It just takes one person to do it, and then it becomes a permission slip for everyone else to do it. I think it was in the 50s, I believe, as a mile runner in the Olympics, Roger Bannister, I think he's from the UK. And for the longest time, all you ever heard, it's impossible to run a 4-minute mile. Don't even bother trying to run a 4-minute mile. It's humanly impossible. No one's been able to do it. You're never going to be able to do it. So don't even bother trying. It's impossible. Roger Bannister ran a sub 4-minute mile. He did the absolute impossible. He did it. Guess what? 6 weeks later, someone else did it.
hmm.
And then since then, 20,000 people have done it, including high school students. Why? Because him doing it is the permission slip for everyone else to do it. So what I've done with myself, with my own self-healing and self-realization, it is actionable, repeatable physics. Give yourself permission to heal. Give yourself permission to free yourself from the human condition. Give yourself the permission to do it. You now have the instructions. The book is the actual instructions. You don't have to wonder how to do it.
Hmm.
Follow the instructions. Give yourself permission to create your health. Give yourself permission to create your own liberation. Just like you create a new career, a new job, a new relationship, a new body, whatever it is. Why do we limit ourselves when it comes to health? Or why do we limit ourselves when it comes to the self-realization? It's just a belief. And that belief is part of your own ego mind identity. And that's why it's so hard to let go of it, because you see yourself in them. It's a too big a blow to your own egoic mind to let it go. But let it go, because anything that you're holding on to is not you.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is some deep stuff, and I love it. When do you practice meditation now?
No, no. So no, I don't. But let me give a little context to that. So I used to meditate a lot, and I don't mean for 20 minutes or an hour or 2 hours. I would meditate all day, take a break to eat, and meditate again. I mean, I would stay in a meditative state. So once you do that, and once you make a connection to your own higher consciousness, it's kind of like, let me give an analogy. This is probably easier than me rambling about all that stuff. So Think about building a tunnel underground. Once you build the tunnel, you're connected. You don't have to keep building the tunnel every single time, right? You built it once, it's now connected. You can go from here to here, it's connected. So by doing something, you then make this connection. And so I would just say that I'm connected to what I am. And so you could think of me perpetually in a state of meditation because I don't really think. Well, the stuff that comes out of my mouth has nothing to do with thought. It has nothing to do with five sensory perceptions. So therefore, it can't be through thinking, right? You can think of it as channeling if you like. It's not really channeling, but you can think of it that way. Meditation or true spirituality, okay, it should be applicable moment to moment and everyday life. Otherwise, it's useless. It makes no point to, it doesn't make any sense to me for 23 hours out of the day where the ego mind identity, we're stressed, we're anxious, we're ravenous, whether it's for money or sex or drug, your sensory, it doesn't matter, even if it's for information, right? And then we say, okay, wait a minute, stop. I'm going to go meditate now for 30 minutes. Let me get my crystals and my sound bowls, whatever, right? That's the ego mind identity checking off that box so we could say that it meditated. Okay. It should be the other way around. This is part of the paradigm shift of supercharged self-healing. You should be in a meditative state all the time. It is much easier to be what you really are, authentically what you really are, than pretend to be your ego mind identity, which is just siphoning off all of your life force. We should be calm, connected, with clarity and total communion constantly, all the time. Not for 20 minutes out of the day. Let me go in my room, get my crystals, meditate. So when, which I meant, maybe this sounds funny because when people do you meditate, RJ? No. But I would just say I'm in a perpetual state of meditation. The self is meditation. So this doesn't require any effort. And this is the true nature of things. This is the true nature of you, Trey. This is the true nature of everybody. To be what you really are is a fractal of God, which is connected to everything. There should always be complete mental clarity. There should always be total emotional balance. There should always be total connectivity and communion. Believe it or not, even when you go to sleep, that doesn't even get turned off. That's a whole nother conversation. But that shouldn't even get turned off when you go to sleep. But this is how we need to live. And when we live this way, life is a joy. We enjoy ourselves, we enjoy each other. And on top of that, it's very, very difficult to get sick when you live this way. Because my direct understanding is that all disharmony, dis-ease, comes from disharmonious thought patterns. And I go into great detail about that in the book.
I can't wait. I can't wait. How can people reach out to you? How can they find out more about you?
If people are interested in some of these things that I'm talking about, there's what I call real magic tricks, and make no mistake, they're real magic. Go to superchargedselfhealing.com and you can get a free guide to these magic tricks that I keep alluding to. And they instantly, and I mean instantly, dissolve stress and anxiety in seconds because it completely shifts your energy. It's real magic. So go to superchargedselfhealing.com and just get a free guide. If you're interested in working with me or taking a course, having a session, go to ascendthefrequencies.com. And oddly enough, my email is rj@ascendthefrequencies.com.
Well, what's your mission here right now, right? Like putting the book out, having a tangible evidence of your experience, but what do you want to do with it?
Oh, to raise the frequency of humanity.
Mm.
Totally. I'm not here to help. I'm here to change things.
Awesome.
This is why I'm here, to completely change the paradigm, the understanding of how human beings operate. I am obsessed with the efficacy of the evolution of consciousness. And so when we work with ourselves in this way, we are rapidly advancing our own consciousness. When we're doing it through the ego mind identity, it's kind of like putting on a couple of mittens and then going over and touching something and trying to figure out what it really touches or what it really feels like. The ego mind identity is a huge buffer between the self and what is. We have to remove this buffer so we can experience ourselves directly and then experiencing everything else directly. So this is the key to the evolution of consciousness. And supercharged self-healing is, I've been told to call the wisdom that transcends knowledge. It's going to move humanity forward in its understanding of itself, self-healing, and self-realization.
Will that happen in our lifetime?
No, it will not. It will happen for some. It will
Mm.
happen for some. Think of it, think of it this way, because I like silly analogies. So think of a high school, right? There's always freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, right? It's never all freshmen, it's never all seniors, right? That would create a massive imbalance. Okay. So there always has to be various levels of understanding and in terms of the way that human beings are operating. There's lots of seniors incarnated on the planet right now. Okay, and that's obvious. And these souls are ready to sort of leave behind the human condition. There's also lots of souls here that are freshmen and they're just getting their feet wet, and it's okay. Everyone gets to evolve in their own way and in their own time, including you. No one is keeping score. There's no such thing as a ticking clock. That doesn't exist. Just stay true to yourself and give yourself credit, because it is extremely difficult to be incarnate in the low frequencies of the physical universe. In fact, I'll tell you, there is nothing more difficult than you can ever do to incarnate into the lowest frequencies of the physical universe. There's nothing harder than where we are now. There's nothing more solid than solidity. This is it. This is the true master class in terms of the evolution of consciousness. And this is why it's so important to wake up and to realize yourself. Because think of another stupid analogy. Think of when we have the diving competition, say like in the Olympics, right? And if someone does a swan dive, which is kind of easy, right? But they do it perfectly. But it's an easy dive, and the judges go 7.5, right? Even though it was perfect, right? But then someone else goes up there, even the same diver goes back up there and does a triple backwards somersault flip, right? High degree of difficulty. Now, that's almost never perfect. But if you do a good job with that, that's a 9. That's a 9.5 degree of difficulty. Okay, so the opportunity that we're afforded by incarnating into the low frequencies, the accrual of sentience, or the evolution of our consciousness, this is the greatest degree of difficulty, and therefore the reward also can be higher. We can jump in terms of our evolutionary progression by realizing the self in the lowest frequencies, or by doing the hardest dive, right? And doing a good job with it. So give yourself credit. This is difficult. Go at a pace that works for you. Work with yourself in a way that feels right. Work with people, other people that feels right, that resonates with you. It's not a rush. There's nothing to prove. You're not going to become anything. We only ever become astray. You're simply going to undo all the nonsense that's accrued through societal pressures and incarnating into the lower frequencies. Give yourself the opportunity to flower. Be patient. Be patient. Be gentle with yourself. Love yourself. And do the same with others.
Mm. RJ, I'm gonna have you come back on, man. This has been awesome, dude. I can't thank you enough.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Trey. Yeah, just let me know. We'll do it again for sure.